Let's be special. Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to my patch 7.8 rundown. Patch 7.8 is going to be really interesting because of two reasons. Number one, well, I'll add a third. Number one, it is the patch that almost definitely is going to be used for the mid-season invitational. So this is going to be the patch for the most important international tournament we have had so far this year. What's also interesting is patch 7.7 in almost no regions ever. There are some possible alternations here, but patch 7.7 for basically nowhere was used in pro play. And so 7.6 has been used in the playoffs for the North American LCS, for the European LCS, for like the OPL playoffs, for the LCK playoffs. What's interesting is to contrast to a region like China, which at this time today had still been playing the regular season, while Gallia was disabled in the North American and European LCS playoffs because 7.6 had never been played. 7.6 was the Gallia patch. Because Gallia was never played in the regular season, he was disabled for playoffs. It was deemed, I think for competitive integrity reasons, that, hey, it's a champion that we've never gotten to see. He's disabled for the playoffs. In China, though, they've been able to play Gallia and have in the regular season. And so some regions have some small differences. China, I don't know, but maybe we'll play their playoffs in 7.7. I don't know for sure. That's a possibility, but that's me speculating. Either way, 7.8, for the most part, is going to be, it's two patches of one because it's 7.7. For all the like NALCS players, they're still playing their playoffs and finals and whatnot. And then they're going to go to MSI and it's going to be on 7. They were playing at 7.6, going to play in 7.8. Okay, whatever. The other interesting point, I suppose, is that this is probably the last patch before midseason. So there are not going to be any more small patches for a month or two. There's going to be a giant 7.9 midseason patch with all kinds of crazy stuff going on. And we're all going to clamor to get ourselves into a decent spot. Okay, enough about the preamble. Let's talk about what's going on here. Xayah and Rakan are going to be in patch 7.8. Xayah and Rakan are really interesting. Xayah, I think, is somewhat ready out of the box. I think playing Xayah isn't terribly hard. She is somewhat easy to play in that she doesn't have a lot of skill shots to deal with. There's no like super intricate mechanics. The feathers require some attention. The R requires some timing. But if you don't know what Xayah and Rakan do, there's plenty of resources down here to look at them. But I think Xayah is going to be basically ready outside the box. I think Rakan, I actually think people are going to consider Rakan incredibly weak. That's my theory. Because Rakan is different from other supports. Rakan is semi-ranged, kind of like Thresh. He counts as ranged. He can't use Relic Shield easily. But he's also squishy, but he also has to go into melee range. A lot like Thresh. And I think Rakan is tricky enough to play that people are going to be bad at playing him. Now, I might be wrong in that assessment, but I think people are going to call Rakan weak, weaker than he actually is. And I think Xayah is ready outside the box as long as her numbers are fine. Let's go into the changes. Atrox is getting some changes, all right? His passive now refreshes against jungle monsters. That's a huge deal. His passive attack speed gain is going up, and his W healing gain is going up. These are all pretty large. Well, we look at what Atrox has been doing. Oops, sorry, let me... things aren't going the way I wanted them to. 1 second, let me update this properly. You know what? Who cares? It doesn't matter anymore. I screwed up my preparation. My apologies. Basically, Atrox is a somewhat balanced top laner, and he's a very weak jungler. So the fact that this now works against the jungle is a pretty big deal. This helps him significantly because it actually works now, and it is a pretty big buff, but also just the stats are going up. And so I wanted to show some quick numbers on how different that is. So what I did was I basically looked at how much attack speed he has normally from base stats, how much attack speed he would get from his Blood Well, how much attack speed he gets now, and basically, you can kind of see that plus 10% means a bit more in the early game than it does level 18 when he's got 51% base attack speed gain. Anyway, these amplify on the same sort of tier as his base AS gain, so you have that. And then as far as the W heal, I looked at his base stats. I guess that what if you're at half HP? That's a reasonable place to be at when you're healing, and you can kind of see the difference in heal. Again, it's a 1.5% gain, but it actually matters quite a bit. You're getting 10-something health by mid-game. It's pretty reasonable. I think it's pretty good. So that exists. Good for you, Atrox. Now, Amumu is also getting some changes. Basically, I think this will make Atrox top totally great and totally playable and fine. Atrox jungle, I don't know. I'm not experienced enough with Atrox jungle. He certainly won't be less crap, or he certainly will be less crap. I don't know if he's going to become good. I just don't know. All right, let's talk about Amumu. This is interesting to me. The more I thought about it, the more I kind of agreed and understood. So first off, apparently, they didn't mean to do the passive the way they did. So it used to be 15% of magic damage post-mitigation. Now it's 10% magic damage pre-mitigation. Let me illustrate an example for you, okay? If you, before the patch, were going to do 100 magic damage to a target with 100% magic resist, or sorry, 100 magic resist, your 100 damage would be cut in half, down to from 100 to 50, and then that would be multiplied by 15%. So it would be 50 plus 50% of 50, which is 7.5, and you do 57.5 damage, which is still 50% more damage than you were before. It was always 50% more damage. Now, if you're going to deal 100 damage to a target with 100 magic resist, it would be 100 damage, cut in half to 50, but you're going to add 10% of that 100 damage back on, and you're going to go from 50 to 60, which means you're doing a lot of damage here. You're doing quite a bit more. That seems pretty strong. I'm going to figure out... Oh, there's the Atrox tab. So yeah, his top lane win rate was 49.5%. His jungle win rate 45%, which is quite low. Actually, not as bad as I thought it might be, but obviously a fair bit weak. This will bring probably top lane above 50, and it'll bring jungle closer to 50. Okay. Here's Amumu. He's actually very strong. 53% win rate is quite high. And this is for platinum and higher. Like, this is for pretty good League of Legends players. Win rate consistently been quite high. Pick rate's consistently been pretty high. And even the ban rate's been above average. So people have recognized that Amumu is in fact quite strong. And as we show some graphs, why is this not animating? Game. Something's being weird. Give me a second. Why is this not doing what I wanted it to? There we go. All right, we're back in action. So Amumu. This is the chart for, it's a lot of numbers, let's break it down. This is the comparison between now and 7.7, what he had on live. So the green, so you can see basically at 100 magic resist, right here, this row, it does 20% more damage. It's 20% damage amp to anything who's somewhat tanky. And then when you're against a really big MR tank, like 200 MR, the passive is worth 30% bonus damage. That is real good. Now, it's green versus red compared to what the old passive did in 7.7. So you can see at 50 MR, it's identical, which means, yes, it is weaker in the early game against champions who don't have any MR yet. And it is weaker especially against jungle monsters because you're going to get 10% more damage. And in fact, if they have negative MR, which some jungle camps do, it's even worse than that. I also, for sake of clarity and continuing on the trend, I compared to 7.6 values. This is how much AMP 7.6 Magic Shred gave you. And you can see the break even is all around this 30 to 50 points. So basically, the mantra continues. It is a bit worse against squishies. It is better against tanks. So Amumu is a better tank buster. But it's worth pointing out as we get ourselves over to these patch notes, that's only one of the changes. His Despair lost some damage. This to me came out of kind of left field because, wait, why is he getting nerfed in terms of damage? Well, as we pointed out earlier, his win rate's actually very high. And so I can understand it on that context that he's actually winning way too many games, that the designers maybe considered him overbuffed and nerfed his W damage. This is a basically quick chart of the base damage in 7.6, the base damage in 7.7 and 7.8, and then the difference in the W% HP damage. These are all just showing you what's already happened to the champion. And so it shows you how buffed or nerfed the ability actually is. It's always better at rank 1. At rank 2, it's equal against 1200 HP. By rank 3, everyone's going to have 800 health, so it is just nerfed in the late game. But it's worth keeping in mind that even though this is worse against percent HP damage, or sorry, it's worse against high HP targets, which also is basically everyone. No one has 600 health at level 9. Because your percent amp is better, You know, it's arguable how good he is against tanks. Let's keep in mind he's amplifying not only his W damage, but every ability on his kit and every ability of every magic damage dealer on your team. He is still worse against squishies. That is going to be true. He is a worse squishy killer, but he is better anti-tank. All right, let's move on. Ivern's getting nerfed. It's really small. I know the designers were considering several other nerfs on Ivern. They all got cut. This is super minor. But basically, W no longer hides Dragon and Baron inside the brush. If you weren't already doing this and hiding Dragon and Baron inside the brush, you were probably playing Ivern wrong. This is honestly pretty abusive. I'm glad it's gone. But the champion is exceptionally powerful. 56% win rate, and it hasn't gone anywhere. He has remained an insanely strong jungler. He has been getting banned some, but he doesn't get played by like anyone ever. So while he is objectively overpowered, he's not really getting played that much. So he's not causing a problem, right? He's overpowered but not causing a problem is what it comes down to. So I understand light nerfs. The champion is definitely very, very strong. Absolutely very, very strong. All right. We have a small buff to Karthus. Basically, it's now easier to buffer the Q. Q is a 1-second cooldown. Spamming gets really important for Karthus. And now you can prepare to cast the next ability. Which means that if you're playing with ping, your Q... Basically, anyone who's not on land ping just got free CDR. Which is obviously a buff for everyone not in Korea. Because no one else is 7 ping. Except maybe people who like live next to the servers. So people in Chicago and Berlin, I think, is where the German one is. I'm not certain. But basically, this is a pretty big deal. This is a pretty big deal. Especially in higher ping servers. Looking at his numbers, he was fine-ish. 50%, 50%, 50%. These are all pretty close. You can see he just kind of jumps back and forth. But he's very unpopular. Basically, I think this makes for some substantial buffs onto Karthus. We actually had seen him in pro play a very, very little bit. We had seen a small amount of Karthus in pro play. Honestly, it's a small buff. It is. It doesn't buff him for LAN at all. Well, not really. It technically can, but it's basically a non-buff for LAN. And hey, he is stronger in online play. Karthus is a better champion. Wonderful. Good for us. Now, it's worth pointing out, by the way, something that people like to talk about is saying, ooh, you know, a champion like Karthus... People, scripters play it. The champion's win rate is elevated by cheaters. This is not fair to call him a 49% win rate champion, Phreak. Cheaters are playing the champion, which raises the win rate. Raises the win rate. And I don't buy that. Because while people do cheat, I think the rate of cheating in League of Legends is very, very low. I think the rate of cheating is very low. And to show this, I'm talking about Xerath. Xerath is a champion that had a pretty famous cheat out for some point in this patch. I think it's gone. I don't know for certain. And the win rate has been 51.5%, 52 kind of percent, and it went up 0.6%. It went up 0.6% in a patch that had a very, like a pretty much auto-win cheat. So to say like, oh man, the winner's being propped up by cheaters. Like among cheating circles, people knew the Xerath cheat. I think it's gone, and if you use it, you'll get banned, so don't do it. But the actual uptick from a demonstrable cheat was pretty low, right? So I don't buy the whole scripters are keeping the win rate afloat because Xerath has been this good for basically ever. Karthus will be that good for basically ever. I don't buy that cheating is part of the reason why a champion has got a passable win rate because cheating is very rare. All right, moving on to Lissandra changes. So Lissandra is getting a shorter cooldown on her Iceborne passive. Worth noting, by the way, the cooldown not only ticked down on its own every second, but could also be ticked down further by landing CC on things, which means that this is arguably even shorter. A bug fix that meant her W sometimes didn't get reduced if it killed things. So further resets to her cooldown now exist. And then her Ice Shard Q gets a slight AP ratio increase, which is supposed to increase her late game sort of overall team fight damage, but not make her more of a lane bully. We can see her win rates are pretty low, 47s. Now, Lissandra tends to be sub 50% win rate while still getting played in pro play. What's interesting is this might, if pros consider her viable, this will add another AP jungler to the top lane. And now, I'm pretty sure Lissandra is good into Rumble. I don't know for sure, but I would guess that she is. If we look at Lissandra top lane matchups, I wonder if we have something here. Apparently, she's good into tanks. That surprised me a little bit. Whatever, doesn't matter. Anyway, Lissandra, a little bit weak, but getting some nice buffs. I have a... Why is it doing this? Oh, I have to zoom all the way out to do it. That's interesting. That's a new feature. Anyway, I looked at Lissandra's damage numbers. The base damage obviously is the same. The ratio is going up 0.05. And so the throughput here is the percentage damage gain for gaining 100 ability power. Very early game, 100 AP is a 3.7% damage buff. In the very late game, well, once you have rank 5, it's about a 2% damage buff for 100 AP. And then I looked at her old full builds. Her old full build with the Rod of Ages and stuff. Basically, her Q in a super late game scenario will do 5% more damage in the late game. That's what you're actually getting out of the skill. That's the buff you're receiving. Great. Now we have Malzahar. Basically, Lissandra obviously gets better. I think these are very small buffs, by the way. I think they're buffs for competitive. In solo queue, I think she's still sub 50%, but in pro play, I think we might see teams wanting to play her because I think she can do well out of things like Rumble. That's my guess. I think her ganks on him are pretty good. And it's another AP threat in the top lane, considering that the only thing people really play as AP threats are Rumble. This might change up champ select quite a bit. Malzahar is losing 2 armor. He's losing health on his Void Swarm, and this Void Swarm is worth less gold. So basically, Malzahar is roughly the premier support pick. He is actually now less seen in pro play than Lulu is seen. But he's still banned like all the freaking time. You can see here's Malzahar's pick ban rate. The fact that he's below Camille isn't really fair because Camille is played as a top laner. But this is a site that looks at pro games, and he is the number 2 support in pro play. He wins more than half the time, which is kind of an unfair stat. The sample is low. But he's in almost every pro support game, which makes him somewhat deserving of a nerf. So the reason that there's a base armor nerf is it doesn't affect his mid lane matchup almost at all. Very rarely is Malzahar really facing physical damage threats, and if he is, he can go for an arm guard, but it's not that big of a deal. But 2 armor in bot lane means a lot more. So it is a sort of desynced nerf to the support role. Voidling health is pretty rough, but again, mid Malzahar relies on more than Voidlings. Support Malzahar less so. And the Voidling gold reward is, I guess, just a feel good for the fact that Voidlings die faster. These are definitely Malzahar nerfs. The goal is to make them less effective against mid lane. Yes, it still affects his mid lane, that's fair. But it'll push him a bit more out of support. I think we will still see him played in support. More and more the pro players picking him. I think we'll still see him. Because the pros, more and more, as his W's been nerfed and his landing's been nerfed, they're playing him just for the suppression. But it will make him more of a trade-off to pick up for the suppression. The fact that he's a viable support is fine, I think. Just not 3/4 of all games. So I think that's fine. I think these are fair nerfs, and he will go down in viability. I think he's still playable, in my opinion. Maybe people think that his landing phase is so nerfed he's gone. I don't think that's true, but who knows. Nautilus, one of the new kings of the tank pool. I know the tanks are all getting nerfed steadily over time. I generally think that tank nerfs should be very small because I think if you want to run a tank, you have to run one somewhere. Now, there's a couple of theories here, right? There's a couple of theories about running tanks in the top lane. So theory 1 is these champions are overpowered, and Nautilus and Maokai and Shen and Poppy are all bonkers. They're overpowered. They need to be nerfed. That's one theory. Another theory is teams just want to run tanks in compositions, and I agree. Teams want to run tanks in compositions. People want to run tanks, and there's one of 2 sub-theories. The best tanks are the top lane ones, or you can't run tanks in the jungler support role. And that to me is kind of BS, because every champion is always going to be a trade-off. A tank support is a weaker laner than a range support. Fact. He's always going to be a weaker laner. And if all you care about... So, of course there's always a trade-off to running a tank support. Braum doesn't lane as well as Lulu. Fact. But until there is a reason to make that trade-off, aka tanks aren't just the best top laners, you're never going to make that trade-off. We know Braum and Alistar are playable champions. We see them occasionally in pro play when people really, really want to play Rumble in the top lane and things like that. We know that there are viable tank junglers like Gragas, and you can go Cinderhulk Elise, and you can go Cinderhulk Jarvan, you can play Amumu and things like that. We know these champions are fine. So until there's actually a trade-off to picking your tank top laners, you're not going to see those other champions, burgeon up. And if the tank top laners do get nerfed to where that's actually a real trade-off to picking them, we might actually see some people play different champions their other roles. But basically, if tanks are no longer automatically the best top lane pick, and to be fair, they're not always automatically the best top lane pick, but they're frequently the best top lane pick. If you make people pick non-tanks in top lane, you'll start seeing the tanks in the jungle and support role. And because people are playing them, you're going to start to actually see the innovations and the intelligent plays come out of them. So that is my entire spiel on Nautilus getting nerfed. His solo queue stuff is fine. He's totally balanced in solo queue. This will probably put him closer to the Maokai tier, where Maokai's at like the mid to high 40s. I don't believe I actually have the stats for him in pro play, but he's, I think, the number 3 top laner behind Camille and around Shen. My apologies for not preparing that. But let's show ourselves the quick chart on what's up with the champion. And basically, here's his old MP5, his new MP5, which is the mana regen stat. And here's how much regen he has compared to before. Now, it's worth noting, by the way, that unless you're running the Meditation Mastery, which no one probably should in this champion, all mana regen you gain is based off this number. Like, if you buy, for some reason, a Fairy Charm, like if you buy Redemption for some reason, this number still holds accurate because everything is based off of your base stats. There's no flat regen in the game anymore outside of, again, Fairy Charm. Actually, to be fair, Doran's Ring. Doran's Ring has flat regen on it. So this gets squashed a little bit, closer to 50%, or sorry, close to 100% for the Doran's Ring spammers out there. And triple Doran's Ring has been a very popular build, so the nerf effect of this mana regen is a little bit, again, quashed. As far as his costs are concerned, of course, they're up 1/4 to 1/8. Overall, obviously, it means he can spam less, his wave clear is less good, and maybe it means that Nautilus may run out of mana regen, may run out of mana sometimes. It's possible, it's not a guarantee, but it can happen. All right, let's move on. Rise. So much like Karthus, Rise is getting changes, where the Q cooldown is going to reset at the beginning of the W and E cast, which will allow you to buffer the ability. It will allow you to buffer the ability, which means online Rise is better. This definitely, once again, is a CDR buff to people playing online. It doesn't help Koreans, it doesn't help LAN players. People playing online. It will help LATAM North, actually by quite a lot. But everyone in high ping servers rejoice. Rise is now stronger. I expect a legitimately several % win rate buff for this change, because Rise is very, very, very much about chaining the skills, and ping affects that quite a bit. Worth pointing out that Rise, obviously incredibly weak right now. 37% win rate is super duper low. What's funny is if we look at this bit of text right here, if you can read it, has a 37.86% win rate for average players playing Rise. The very best Rises are earning a win rate of 50.45%. What's crazy is really good Rises are still making it work, which is pretty insane. And if you look at Rise's pick rate in pro play, he's actually still in there, 16%. It's above Aurelion Sol. It's above Kassadin. It's above Zed. It's above Katarina. It's above Twisted Fate. People are still playing Rise over all these other champions that... Lux, remember how people said Lux is going to be broken? She's been played once. Sorry, yeah, once. And lost. So in pro play... Actually, was the Lux buff in 7.7? It might have been in 7.7. I might be crazy. I might be stupid. My apologies if that was the case. And Rise is actually winning half the time. 50% win rate in pro play. 14 picks, 10 bans. Right? On lane with experts, Rise is still totally playable and seems to be working just fine. So this will help push him towards that expert status. I think he will still be substantially weak for non-experts, and especially, well, less so online. I think he's still a bad solo queue pick. This doesn't affect pro play basically at all, but will at least bridge the gap a little bit, which is helpful. All right, let's move on. There are significant Shen changes, and it's kind of a lot to get through. All right, so we're gonna go with the easy stuff first. Okay, we're gonna forget Q for now. Shadow Dash costs less energy and has a greater width. Okay, so Shadow Dash is a better skill. And the thing is, these kinds of things are buffs. They will still help Shen experts, but they are larger buffs for Shen novices, right? Increased radius. If you're a pro play, you tended to taunt flash anyway and just land the guy regardless. But sometimes will help. The energy cost. Pros were better at managing their energy costs, but of course will buff them, but helps novices more. And here's the really interesting change. The cooldown goes up. This is meant to be 180, by the way, not 80 at rank 1. It's a typo. Don't worry about it. Cooldown is up 20, 30, 40 seconds. And the shield, instead of being a flat value, is substantially nerfed, but scales up if your ally is injured. And it scales up to 280 instead of 250, 560 instead of 550, and 840 instead of 850. So it's essentially the same at 40% HP or lower, and it is weaker otherwise. And the rationale behind this was because in pro play, they tend to be proactive Shen ultimates. Like, we're going to go dive you, let's pop the Shen ult early, which nerfs the proactive shield. And in solo queue, it tended to be reactive, oh crap, Ashe is dying, give her the shield, which tends to be as good. So that's the rationale behind the changes. I agree it's going to affect those situations properly. Shen tended to be used more proactively in pro play. He is still used reactively some, but either way the cooldown nerf is going to hurt him. So R is weaker in basically all cases. E is better in all cases. And there's a big set of Q changes. Okay, what's happening? Okay, well, there's several mechanics. First, we're going to talk about the mechanics of Shen. When Shen hits Q, he gets a buff for 3 auto attacks. And those auto attacks do 2 to 4% of your target's max HP based on rank. Additionally, if the Q went through a champion on the way to you, that number is buffed by 2%, meaning it's now 4 to 6% max health based on ranked. It also dealt flat bonus damage to minions based on rank, that's this number here, and also did that damage to champions. So the initial damage numbers are still the same. The 2 or 4 to 4 or 6% health damage is still there. But now it has this 15 to 40 flat damage against all targets, including champions. That scales with character level, not rank. And this bonus damage is doubled against monsters. And the percent HP damage was capped anyway. It already was. Well, what does this mean? Don't worry, I've got you covered. Here's Shen's Q. Oh god, that's a lot of numbers, I know. So what I did is I took the not special Q damage. He presses Q and gets the 2 to 4% bonus damage based on rank without the 2% bonus that came in. Okay. And I added that to his base stats, and I pretended that his target was Shen himself, just to have a base stat value, because percent HP damage needs a health pool, obviously. So against champions, at level 1, if you hit Q, it did 70 damage. Now it does 85 damage. And what's interesting is the way this lines up, even though we're using the same Q base damage for the 2% max HP, the same Shen total attack damage to count this all, the flat bonus damage you're getting means that Shen is doing 20% more damage before modifiers. Now, if his target buys HP, if Shen buys attack damage, a lot of Shens buy Tiamat, this goes closer to a 0% buff. But the way it is right now, you're seeing this 30 damage buff. Unitemized, Shen does 20% more damage to champions. Wow, that's pretty substantial. That's pretty good. What about damage to minions? Well, it's what it used to do based on hitting Q. Now, it's worth pointing out, by the way, I did not include the percent health damage against minions because minions have very low health bars. I probably should have, to be fair, but I didn't because I'm a bad person. This is what the damage used to be. This is what the damage is now. So his wave clear, his ability to last hit under turret definitely goes down. Now, I don't know if this makes a difference between him last hitting under turret or not. I'm not a Shen player. I don't play top lane almost at all. But this is what it's going to do to you. And not counting the percent HP damage, this is the damage difference. Now, worth pointing out that Jungle Shen also took a hit, by the way. Now, I don't know how much of this damage was going to reach the cap anyway. Some of this may not matter at all, but when he was hitting jungle monsters, if he was hitting Baron, if he was actually playing in the jungle, for whatever reason, if he wanted to, it is still weaker. The numbers are worse. My apologies. Shen's support win rate was quite low. His top win rate, a little bit low as well. He's losing some power in the ultimate. It can only pretty much ever be worse. He is better or worse at fighting champions. It's up to you to determine. His wave clear is lower. Well, he's better at fighting champions. He's worse at wave clearing, and he's better at taunting. We'll see what it comes out for him to be. I would guess that the ult nerf doesn't really affect his pro play that much. Or sorry, his solo queue that much. It affects pro play more. We'll see what happens. Shen was indeed the number 2 top laner in 7.6. Behind Camille. And Camille got nerfed in 7.7. So it is no surprise that we are trying to nerf Shen for this. Because Shen is almost always pushed into his turret, by the way. The wave clear difference might be a big deal. We'll see what happens. All right, let's move off of Shen. That took a long time. Udyr also has massive changes. Oh, baby, it's a lot to go through. Okay, let's start with the fact that his mana costs, instead of scaling with ability rank, scale with character level. Whoa. It was interesting. It's very easy to say, wait, but I maxed something first. Why is it 35 mana and not, 40-something? Don't worry, I got you covered. Oh, here's the Shen R cooldown, by the way. It's 11 to 30% longer, and the max CDR cooldown is still pretty long. Okay, whoa. So Udyr. It's a big chart for Udyr. Well, whatever you maxed first, this was the mana cost. Whatever you maxed second, this was the mana cost. Whatever you maxed third, this was the mana cost. And if you had that crap point in Phoenix Dance by the end of the game, that was the mana cost. New costs are this. New costs are 50 to 33 based on basic character level. Okay, so this is what you care about right here. Whatever I max first costs up to 7 more mana right at level 9. It's, it costs more for the entire game. That's fair. So if I'm maxing Tiger Stance, it costs more mana for most of the game. Whatever I'm maxing second, which is maybe Bear Stance, it's better at some points, equal at some points. The mana cost is pretty close to the same, though. I mean, +2 is basically nothing, right? It's up to +5, which is a little bit rough, I guess, but, a little bit more equal. But, yeah, okay, it hurts a little bit more, costs a bit more. What about I max third, my Bear Stance? Okay, well, Bear Stance actually costs less for most of the game. Or that feels a bit better. And, of course, my R, whatever. So this is kind of what you care about, this column. The full combo of casting every ability on your toolbar costs 3 more mana total. Now, yeah, Riot could have made this 49 to 32 instead of 50 to 33. Maybe that's the better choice to make this 0 instead of +3. You could argue that. Maybe that's fair. I think overall, this change is, I'm going to guess, a nerf to the champion because your full combo costs more mana. And you're probably going to use Tiger and Turtle Stance more than you're going to use the Bear Stance. We're assuming you're maxing Tiger, Bear, Turtle. Or sorry, Tiger, Turtle, Bear. So this is actually probably more than 3 mana nerfed. This, I think, is overall kind of a nerf. But again, it does make you feel better for using that bear stance. It means you could always switch to any stance. I just wanted to put his max mana pool here just for comparison, just so you knew what it was. That costing 3 more mana when your pool is 400 is not insane, but I mean, it does kind of hurt him, right? So it doesn't mean a huge deal, but it does slightly nerf him. Okay. This is insane. This is actually bonkers. Okay? This is bonkers. Let's break it down. First, a nerf. You no longer do 50% total AD every auto attack while in Tiger stance. Okay. The bleed damage, the way it worked, when you pressed Q on Tiger stance, you got a buff. And when you attacked, you applied a bleed to your opponents. And that bleed used to do this much damage. 30 to 230, plus, I think it was 120 to 160% of your total attack damage. And that got nerfed to 30 to 150. That is so much less damage. Wait, so you're nerfing this, and you're nerfing this. What the hell, Riot? Well, you see, what's being added is this, and this is insane. So Tiger stance now works like Phoenix stance, where your first attack, and then every third one after, applies the same benefit. It applies this damage. So instead of being 15% total damage per auto attack, every third attack does this. And this, by the way, has a total AD ratio on it, which means damage is bonkers. It also means that you can't negatively overwrite your Q. It means you can prep your Q, hit someone, hit Q again, hit him, get the bleed again, and if your attack speed is high enough, the next 3 auto attacks will consume the bleed to deal its full damage and then start a new one. So there is no negative attack speed scaling on Udyr. And I want to show you the damage numbers of how insane that is. Okay, we're going to start with this part here. It's a bunch of red numbers. The old bleed damage for hitting someone. This counts his total attack damage ratio. This does not count the auto attack itself. It's purely the damage of the bleed. The damage of the bleed is the same at levels 1 through 3 because you don't hit another point into it. And it goes down to 80% is good, 75% is good. Okay, it lost some value because keep in mind, the thing still has a total attack damage ratio. So the base damage nerf is not as big as you think. Then we look at this. The old on-hit damage, 50% of his total attack damage was some. It existed, meh. And now it has this. It re-triggers the bleed every third auto. So I took 1/3 of this value and I made it this. Yes, you're seeing a 700% damage from the on-hit damage. Holy Lord, this is a lot. If you stay in Tiger stance, this is insane. And again, if you already had a bleed going, you can consume it and deal full damage again. It's okay. And so what I looked at was what I think the new mantra is for Udyr, which is get 4 auto attacks in per stance. It's going to change how you play Udyr. Because keep in mind, like, this percentage right here, this 120%, if I go in Tiger stance and I hit you 4 times, and I get those 2 bleeds, this is my total damage for 4 auto attacks. This includes, by the way, his total attack damage, his old bleed damage, his old on-hit damage. In 7.7, if I hit Tiger stance and autoed you 4 times, this is my damage. And I know my head is covering some of the numbers. That's fine. I did 360 to 930 damage. And now I do 430 to 1100 damage if I auto you 4 times in Tiger stance. Now this is, to be fair, the best possible scenario for the buff. If it's 2 attacks, if it's 3 attacks, if it's 5 attacks, if it's 7 attacks, well, 7's okay. If it's 6 attacks, those are worse. Heck, if I do it once, it's worse, as we see right here. but it means that to get the most value out of a stance, you want to attack 4 times. Because keep in mind, Udyr has a mandatory 2-second cooldown lockout. So when I hit Tiger Stance, I have to wait 2 seconds anyway. What else am I going to do with that 2 seconds? Probably attack you 4 times. And so it adds an extra pacing mechanic to Udyr. He needs to attack 4 times to get full value because there is no more on-hit effects on that champion. And so it means there's a new mandatory pacing requirement on that champion. And it's going to change how you play it. It's going to add new skills to the champion. It's going to do new things to the champ. It's going to be a new experience for Udyr players. But this is a substantial buff. This is very large. There's another change. The W, Turtle Stance, is no longer lifesteal. It is a max health heal in the same mechanic as Tiger Stance, which is first attack and every 3rd attack after. Instead of every hit, it's 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. Yes, he is getting 2 3-hit passives. This wouldn't be a Riot game without 3-hit passives. And I did numbers on that as well. Here's W. All right. And let me explain what these things are. I looked at his base attack damage and his base health. And I said, if you max Turtle 2nd, here's what your lifesteal is. If you max Turtle 3rd, sorry, what it was in 7.7. If you max Turtle 3rd, which some people did, it was the 2nd most common build. They would max Bear Stance first. This was the lifesteal. And now, because your W rank doesn't matter anymore, it only affects the shield value, which means we might stop seeing it maxed. Who knows? This was if you were full HP, you got this much health back. And if you were at 0 HP, you got this much health back. So your restore is now in this range every 3rd attack, including the 1st attack. And so once again, I said, what if you go for 4 auto attacks? And I took the worst possible scenario for the new build. I said, if you max Turtle 2nd, here's how much lifesteal you got. This is as generous as you can get with his base stats. If you maxed Turtle 2nd, you got this much health back for attacking 4 times. And now, if you were basically full HP, right, you can double this number if you were super injured. And in fact, you probably will be, but you could double this number if you wanted to show you how much better it is if he was at 0 health. This could be doubled, up to doubled. And he's getting 33 to 113 health. It is always higher. And you can see, lose percentage buff. It's basically up to 40% more health restored. If you, again, do the 4 auto attack pacing. If you play around that 2-second lockout of the global cooldown, this is a lot of health. Now, of course, this scales with HP, not attack damage. Tiger Stance, of course, scales with attack damage, not health. There's some differences here, right? You plug in your own build, who knows what you're going to come up with. But it means that if you find yourself needing to be more durable, buying health will give you more healing, which is pretty good. I would say it's pretty good. Udyr was a 47% win rate jungler. He was slightly weak. And I think these are definitely buffs. And I showed them with, I think, the charts, that I think it was demonstrable that those were buffs to the champion. Okay. And again, it pretty much mandates that you're going to be playing a pacing style on Udyr, where you're going to go for those 4 auto attacks. But I think they are definitely buffs if you can get yourself to do it. All right, now we have the fun things. We have changes to Howling Abyss. We have changes to ARAM. All right, let's talk about what's happening. Okay, let's go over the gold income. Being near an enemy minion without it dying, or without you last hitting it, gives you 3 gold per minion. Okay, so everyone gets 3 gold per minion, except the guy who last hits it. Minions themselves are worth less gold. Okay. But also, the minions spawn every 20 seconds instead of every 30 seconds. So there's more minions. Oh, and there's more cannons. They spawn every other wave instead of every 3rd wave. Okay, so there's more minions. There's more cannons. But they're worth less gold. But sometimes they're worth ambient gold. Don't worry, guys. Numbers. Oh, that's health relic. We're going to skip that for now. There we go. This is this. So everyone already gained 5 gold per second, right? They gained 300 gold per minute just by existing. And now, if you never lasted a single thing, if you're playing Soraka, you're getting another roughly 60 gold per minute from being AFK in lane. Now, this is more gold than the coin was giving you. It is more gold. Feels good, man. What you used to get for last hitting the minion waves, if you had perfect CS, you got 318 gold per minute from last hitting every single melee caster and cannon minion. You're now getting 400.5 gold per minute, last hitting every single melee caster and cannon. So it's worth pointing out that if you were AFK the entire game, you get 19% more gold. And if you perfectly CS'd everything, you get 13% more gold. In the real world, you're going to be somewhere in the middle between these two, where you're getting 15% more gold, last hitting some of it. So gold income is increased 15% across the board, basically. Now, that doesn't count champion kills. Champion kills obviously existed. Though it's worth pointing out that if you're getting champion kills, and champions are being killed, and you're earning gold and they're earning gold, you're now dead and not getting the coin in CS gold. So, you know, that kind of balances itself out. But you're getting more gold. That's what it comes down to. Okay, what about the other changes? Okay, well, the old GP10 stuff is gone. That's fine. Whatever. You're going to buy real items now. We're going to move on with our lives. Health relics are spawning sooner, and their healing is different. Instead of this flat value, it's a different value based on missing health. Well, I have that number. Here's the old healing. The new healing if you're full, which you're not going to use, so why bother? So this is irrelevant. If you're super injured, if you're basically dead, it's better. And if you're at half HP, it's better in the early game. Now keep in mind, it spawns at level 3, so these actually don't exist, the level 1 and 2. At the start of the game, you're level 3. So it's mostly worse for the somewhat injured, but is better for the gravely injured. So health relics and ARAM are now much better at reviving you off of death's door. Great. Okay. Now we know. The one other thing I was going to bring up is the fact, I guess assist timers are longer, so you can get gold from assist better. That's nice. Super minions are stronger. They have more armor, they have more damage, and they buff other minions and champions out of combat move speed while following super minions. That's kind of cool, right? So let's look at the numbers of how much it helps supers. Basically, they are 50% more durable against physical. They do 70% more damage. Just real quick. Now you know. That's how much those changes matter. Someone in chat had said, now with Targon's gone, it means melee champions are going to be useless, which means you miss the fact that you're gaining more gold by being near dying minions. Ambient gold went up more than last hitting gold went up. Tanks are not going to be useless. They're going to buy a Guardian's Horn. They're going to be fine. Some random points to Poros. Whatever. Now, tree line's also getting some changes. Slight death armor changes. Slightly longer earlier, slightly shorter later. There's a big context paragraph. If you're a really big tree line player, you might want to read it. Mostly these are very small. Well, I don't know tree line well enough anymore to tell you what is actually... what the net effect on the metagame is going to be. I couldn't really tell you. But basically, minion damage to turret goes up. Super minions get the same buffs to stats that they got on Howling Abyss. So super minions kill the game better. When you kill an inhibitor, they're much, much stronger. Nexus turrets are weaker. Vile Maw is easier to kill. So closing games out when you're killing the base and taking over objectives is stronger. And the game pacing is going up. Minions spawning sooner, monsters spawn sooner, altars spawn sooner, all that fun stuff. And health relics actually got bug fixed and changed. Basically, the health relics are actually always worse now. This is the Twisted Treeline Relic old versus new. Because the value was doubled via a bug, it used to heal you for this much, which was a lot. And now you're healing for this much off the Relic. And even at max HP missing, it is still not as much. So Health Relic got weaker. That's what it comes down to. The game is otherwise a bit faster paced. Great. Stormrider Surge got nicer visuals. Krugs. This doesn't mean a lot. Basically, you could leash Krugs kind of all the way to the red buff or towards bot lane, like towards the tier 1 turret. And you could have the mini Krugs kind of keep following you as you killed things off. Now they all have the same leash range. It's worth pointing out that you can still leash them all to that brush right by the Krug camp. That's not changed. The leash range is far enough that you can still do that. So, you know, sitting in the brush so you don't get flanked is still there. Whatever. It's a really minor thing, but it just makes sure you don't get confused. I'm sure there's going to be like a pro jungler who's like, but I use this. It doesn't matter. This is nice. Rift Scuttle just shows who killed a bit more cleanly. Wards play audio when dying. Loot chests have a description update. Poro King game mode should be fun. Large updates to League client update. If you want to know what the updates are, feel free to read. And these bug fixes, I went through them. They pretty much all mean almost nothing. Sometimes Lucian Q cost him a ton of mana. Theoretically, it was possible for Galio R to make him not do anything. And then the rest of these are actually very, very minor, so we're not going to really bother with this. Zaya and Rakan and Master Yi and Karma getting some skins. Feels good, man. So those are the changes in the patch. Hope you enjoyed the patch rundown. I'm curious to see whether or not Udyr becomes pro viable. There's a decent chance. I think he's very, very buffed, but we'll see. I'm curious to see if we do find substantial metagame changes in champions played, because Alistar had buffs in 7-7, and that's pretty substantial. We already know Braum is good with Stoneborn Pact, so there's a decent chance we start seeing more tank supports, we start seeing less tank tops, maybe we see more tank junglers, who knows. It'll be interesting to watch what people think is going to happen with the mid-season invitational, but that's what the patch is going to be. That's the rundown. So if you have any comments, concerns, criticisms, please, I'd love to hear them. Feel free to give your critiques, whether in the chat on the live stream or in the YouTube comments below, or tweet me. My Twitter is right there. Let me know how you felt about it. If you missed any of this rundown, it's up on YouTube right there. And if you want to see me live stream more, my Twitch channel is right there. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.